about 50% organic matter. Do you know what organic matter is?
Matter that's organic.
Yeah, so it's stuff that has been alive.
Oh, I thought it was things with nitrogen or something.
Yeah, yes, all stuff that is alive has nitrogen in it. That is a good answer. So organic matter supplies all of the nitrogen to the soil. So yes, so it's 50% organic. About 50% organic. And about 50% inorganic. What is inorganic?
Stuff that hasn't been alive.
Yes! Yes, it's stuff that hasn't been alive. So, in the case of soil, it's called the parent material, which is rocks. It's the bedrock. So the stuff that's probably like anywhere between 5 and 40 feet below us it's just the like rock part of the earth. That's the parent material. And that's what breaks up and forms the either sand, clay, or silt. That's the mineral part of the soil. And the parent material dictates what kinds of minerals are going to be in the soil and what the pH of the soil is going to be. Do you guys know about pH?
I heard it today.
You did? Did you learn about it today?
We didn't learn about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so pH is the concentration of hydrogen ions in a substance. So, more hydrogen ions is more acidic, more hydroxide ions is more basic. But that's more like we don't have to really talk about the chemistry so much. But what you do have to talk about is that some plants like more acidic soil, some plants like more basic soil, so it's important to know the pH of your soil. And that is dictated by the parent material, which is the bedrock, which is the inorganic material. It's all the same. And the bedrock breaks down, so first it's just like solid rock, and then it's boulders, enormous boulders. And this is happening because the world is always, like tectonic plates. We live in California, there are earthquakes, stuff like that. Like the world is always moving around. And there's like water and air going down into cracks in the ground. And it breaks up the rocks, and the rocks turn into huge boulders, smaller boulders, big rocks, which I guess you could call tiny boulders, regular sized rocks, small rocks, little tiny rocks, pebbles, sand, silt, clay. And that's as small as it gets. So the types of inorganic material in soil are I want to make sure I put these in the right place. Clay, silt, and sand.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you drill through bedrock?
Yeah, you can. That's what fracking is.
Fracking?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what fracking is.
Okay, well, it's drilling through bedrock in order to release the natural gases that are caught in the spaces between the bedrock. So, yeah, you can. And out of the three of these, sand is biggest pieces, and clay is smallest pieces. Wow, that is not. So, have you guys ever done pottery, like in school or whatever?
No.
Okay, well, Alma, tell me, what does clay feel like to hold?
Mud, kind of, but like it's like hard Play-Doh.
Yeah.
But it's really smooth.
Yes, it's smooth. So clay is these tiny little, they're flat discs called platelets, and they all stick together. And since they have so much surface area, when they get wet, they retain water really well because there are a bunch of tiny, tiny little holes in the clay. And that's why you can
Sticking to
very much, yeah, you can make things out of clay, where if you're at the beach and you have sand instead of clay and you try to like make a pinch pot out of sand, obviously it's not going to work because the sand doesn't have the same ability to hold itself together like clay does, because it's very porous, and sand is round where clay is flat pieces, so the water just comes out of the sand very quickly and so it falls apart. And so clay retains water, sand does not. Clay retains nutrients for the same reason it retains water, sand does not. So if you have sandy soil, you're going to lose water quickly, you're going to lose nutrients quickly. If you have clayey soil, you're going to retain a lot of water, you're going to retain a lot of nutrients. So this is called the soil pyramid, and it's the official business way to talk about soil. So these all go from 0%, so this is percentage clay, 0% to 100%, 0% to 100%, 0% to 100%. So, if you have soil that is 100% sand, where would you be?
at the beach.
Yes, at the beach. Or in the desert. So that's what it looks like down here. This is 100% sand. If you have 100% clay, where would you be? This is harder.
The riverbank.
Yes, you would be at the riverbank. You'd be in a place like a bog or a swamp where there's nothing except for clay. So that's what this part looks like here. This is clay. Silt is in the middle. It's a little bit harder to say what silt really looks like. It's kind of like, you can imagine it. It's halfway between clay and sand. So it's kind of small, not super small, doesn't really hold itself together. You can make a mud ball out of silt, but you couldn't make a whole like ceramic vase or whatever it is that you're making out of ceramics with it. So that's down here. So where we like to be is right, makes this funny shape, right here. This is the yay gardening zone. Yay! This is called sandy loam. So it has, on the 0 to 100% scale for sand, it's in the upper part of that, right? And then it has silt, 0 to 100. It's in the upper part of that as well. So this is like 50% silt. This is 100% silt. So it's like between 60 and 100% silt. And then on the clay side of the pyramid, this is 100% clay. This is 0% clay. So it's in the like 0 to 20% of clay. So it has a lot of sand, a lot of silt, and a little bit of clay, because the clay is good for holding in nutrients and water, but you don't want too much, otherwise your garden will never ever drain. You want sand so it can drain, and you want so you have a big mixture of silt and sand and a little bit of clay to hold in the water and the nutrients. So those are the main mineral components of soil. And then there's also, so this is the ingredient list for soil. Ingredient 1, ingredient 2, and then ingredient 3 is water and air. And that goes in all of the little in-between spaces in between the particles, the inorganic material and the organic material. And that is how plants grow. So, we are going to do an experiment today to find out what type of soil we have in the garden. And so we're each going to get a jar and fill it halfway. We're going to disperse into the garden. Everyone chooses their own spot. And you'll fill up your jar halfway with soil. And then label it really well so you remember exactly where your soil came from. And then come back. We'll fill it the rest of the way with water. Shake it for 2 minutes. And then leave it. And then tomorrow, we'll check and we'll be able to see what percent we have of silt, what percent we have sand, and what percent clay, because they'll settle out in layers. Because sand is the heaviest, the biggest, so it goes to the bottom, and then the silt, and then the clay.
Yeah, how will we determine what kind of dirt it is?
Here, I'll show you exactly. So this pyramid is actually way more complicated than the one I drew. So it has, this is silt, silt loam, loam, sandy loam, otherwise known as yay, clay sand loam, clay loam, silty clay loam, silty clay, clay, and sandy clay. As you can see, the scientists who came up with this pyramid had very imaginative names for all of these different types of soil. Yeah, exactly. They just use different combinations of these 3 words. So based on the percentages that we see, so what we'll do is we'll have a jar. And in the jar, it'll look like this. And we'll say, okay, this total is 30 centimeters. So if the total is 30 centimeters and the bottom layer is 15 and the middle layer is 8, the top layer is 7, then we say so if the whole thing, we say 15 centimeters over 30 total is 50%. So then we know that since this is sand, and this is silt, and this is clay, then we know that our soil is 50% sand, because 50% of the total of what we have is sand. And then we do the same thing for the other 2 layers.
Okay.
Yeah? Yeah. Oh, hey, this is cool. You know why nitrogen is necessary for plants?
Why?
Do you know what chlorophyll is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes plants green, right?
Yes, it's what makes them green and also what allows them to do photosynthesis. Nitrogen is an essential part of chlorophyll, so if plants don't have nitrogen, then they won't have enough chlorophyll and they won't be able to photosynthesize. And another thing is that if you over compost your crops and they have too much nitrogen, what they'll do is they will say, oh my gosh, so much nitrogen, I'm going to have so much chlorophyll. And so then they have so much chlorophyll, and so they put all of their energy into photosynthesizing and none of it into fruiting. So you end up with these huge versions of whatever you were trying to grow that just never fruit. So you'll have like an enormous broccoli with no fruit on it. So no flowers, nothing. You can't eat anything off of it. It's just this like big plant. So that's a lesson in how, yes, compost is good because we need this 50% organic material, but if you're not paying attention and you put compost in your bed, and then you put more compost in your bed, and then you put more compost in your bed, you end up creating a problem instead of a solution.
Yeah, we actually had that happen the first year that I worked here over in the East Hoop House. It was too much nitrogen in the soil, and we grew broccoli in there, and none of it headed up. It was just the broccoli plants were about 5 feet tall,
Oh my gosh.
but they were all leaves. There wasn't a single broccoli head on any of the plants, and we ended up writing that off as a crop failure.
Yeah. They're cool looking. I've seen some like
Yeah.
high nitrogen plants, but they
Don't work.
they don't really do what we want them to do. Oh, another thing about organic material, when we catch gophers in the gopher traps, have you guys seen any of the trapped gophers yet?
You guys have trapped gophers?
Yeah, that's what Matthew's gopher count is.
Yeah, I've got pictures on my phone if anybody's really curious.
When Matthew traps a gopher, or, when I trap a gopher, my success rate so far is 0, but I'll get one. They go back into the soil. So there's a gopher in that flower box right out there.
2 gophers.
There's 2 gophers out there. There's a gopher in one of these potted plants over here. So that's a good example of organic material because as the gopher decomposes, it provides the nutrients that the plants need in order to grow.
Oh, you killed it?
Oh, we didn't bury them alive. Texas funeral for those gophers, huh?
If we bury them alive, they're actually really good at digging.
Yeah.
They just come
Get
right
right
back
out.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I can add is that soil looks like if you were to just dig a huge pit and get into it, it would look like this. Actually, this is forever, so I'm gonna erase this bottom line. So this is organic material on top. So that's like plants dying, decomposing. When we put mulch down, it's mulch, stuff like that. Then this is topsoil. This is the really important layer. This is where the organic material and the inorganic material interact most. So the clay, silt, and sand come up from below. The organic material comes down from above. And this is where we grow food. And then this is called the subsoil. And this is the bedrock. So this is like huge boulders. This is like littler rocks. And then so this is how inorganic material moves up to engage with the organic material. So that's how that works.
Do you guys know how long it takes for a single inch of topsoil to form normally?
500 years.
2,000 years. You know how long it takes for us to produce an inch or so of fertile topsoil here using our techniques?
6
months.
About 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why, so tilling, remember how at the beginning we were talking about tilling and how we don't till very much here?
Yeah.
You know what a tiller is? It's the big machine that comes along and
Oh yeah.
flips over all the soil. So when you do that, and then nothing is planted in that soil, and then like the wind blows or there's a big rain event, since we just flipped over a foot of that soil, guess what we're losing when the wind blows or the rain comes? Topsoil that took 2,000 years or 2 years, but it's still important to generate. So, food for thought. Yes.
How? So, you make topsoil from what? Like you guys
Topsoil is organic material plus inorganic material.
So you guys make it. You guys make topsoil, or like convert it from inorganic to organic, whatever. Like Matthew said.
It's management. It's like soil and ecosystem management by combining all the ingredients and being really like diligent with taking care of the soil and enriching the soil. Then the end result over time is topsoil.
Yeah. So this happens no matter what. This movement of the inorganic material from big pieces to smaller pieces, this is always happening. Always. No matter where you are, big pieces of rock are turning into smaller pieces of rock, are turning into smaller pieces of rock, and they work their way up to the surface. So that's always happening. What isn't always happening is there aren't always people on the land who are composting, putting their plant scraps back down onto the ground and providing the organic material layer that'll combine to make the topsoil. So you can end up with just pure inorganic material at the surface. That happens a lot. But then you don't have soil, it's just dirt.
Yeah, I have to say there's another factor too, and that's it's not just what we do. In fact, if it was just humans, we could never produce topsoil. Really, it's all the bacteria and the fungus and the beetles and the worms.
Yes,
So
that's a good point. This is where there's a lot of life here.
yeah, it's a transitory zone, and that is a hotbed for life.
And plant roots, too.
Yep.
That keeps it together, that keeps it all in. They hold the soil in.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Anybody?
Can I see the gophers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they dead in the pictures?
Yep.
No,